So my monthly book roundups have been the videos that are getting the smallest amount of views on my channel. So I'm going to change things up a little bit. So instead of just short reviews and ratings for the books I read within a given month, I'm going to give you basically what I read, what I bought, and what I'm hoping to read soon. So this will be short reviews of the things that I read this month. This is October. A little book haul of the things I've bought this month, and what I'm hoping to read in November. So a little mini TBR of the things that you might see me talk about on the channel in future videos. If you do like this new format, please let me know in the comments below. Like the video, consider subscribing to the channel. I appreciate all of that because that does help people see this video amongst all the videos that are uploaded every day on YouTube. I will also put timestamps below. So if you want to skip to a certain genre of book that I'm talking about, or if you just want to skip to the book haul or skip to the TBR, you can do that as well. But whether you watch the whole video or just a small portion of it, thank you for being here. I do appreciate you clicking on my video. All right, I read 8 books this month. I read 4 in the fantasy genre, 2 classics, and 2 thrillers. Let me start with the thrillers. The first one was one I read on my Kindle. It was a science fiction thriller by Blake Crouch called The Last Town. The Last Town is the 3rd book in Crouch's Wayward Pines trilogy, which I really enjoyed. It's light on the science, so don't be scared away if you're not a big science fiction reader. It is light on the science, but if you like fast-paced stories with a scientific or a science fiction bent to it, you will love these books. I loved how the first book, Pines, started very atmospheric, and then in the 3rd act went a very different direction. The 2nd and 3rd books really were linked together, and the 2nd book had a great cliffhanger, and the 3rd book absolutely stuck the landing. I really enjoyed this series. Very, very fast-paced, riveting storytelling. Blake Crouch, I've read 4 of his books so far, and I've been really impressed with what I've read. So if you like a good science fiction thriller that you can put down pretty quickly, The Last Town, and of course, the preceding books of the Wayward Pines trilogy is something that you will likely enjoy. All right, the other thriller I read this month was The Law of Innocence by Michael Connelly. This is a legal thriller. I don't really read legal thrillers, and I'm not really interested in legal thrillers, but Michael Connelly is simply the most consistently good author in any genre that I have ever read. This was my 35th book by Connelly, and I can honestly say that all 35 books are books that I can recommend without reservation. He is just a master. He is masterful at plotting. He always paces things very quickly. He's the master of the plot turn that is real and makes sense, kind of the anti-Dan Brown, if you will. So even though I'm not a fan of a legal thriller setting, I really enjoyed this book. What this one is about is a lawyer who is accused of murder, and of course he didn't commit the murder, and he's trying to investigate and defend himself and to prove himself innocent. And it was riveting from the first chapter to the very end. So if you like thrillers, especially crime thrillers, legal thrillers, and have not read Connelly, I highly recommend you pick him up. You can read just about anything by Connelly and you'll probably enjoy it. All right, on to the 2 classics I read this month, starting with The Metamorphosis and Other Stories by Franz Kafka. So, full disclosure, I'm not a huge fan of short fiction, and this is a collection of short fiction. The longer works always just hook me a lot more. I like longer works, I like epic works. Short fiction rarely does it for me, so this was kind of a hit or miss collection for me. I did enjoy The Metamorphosis, which started with one of the most brilliant opening lines I've ever read. As Gregor Samsa woke from unsettling dreams one morning, he found himself transformed in his bed into a monstrous vermin. That's a pretty good hook to start a story. So I can definitely recommend The Metamorphosis itself. There's also another one in here called The Stoker that I enjoyed, but the other ones were just kind of, middling for me. If you like short fiction, though, you may like this collection. I can recommend The Metamorphosis. The other stories, kind of lukewarm on those. The other classic that I read this month was Dead Souls by Nikolai Gogol. This is known as the first Russian novel, and as someone who enjoys Russian literature, I had to, of course, read the first Russian novel. I do wish, however, I had picked up the Pavir and Volokhonsky translation because I enjoy their translations quite a bit, but my bookstore didn't have that one, so I picked up this one by a different translator. It was still very good. the thing I liked about this is it's kind of a good entry-level Russian novel. So if you haven't read Russian literature before, one of the challenging parts of reading Russian literature is the vast amount of characters and the fact that the characters have very many names. They often have 3 names and they have diminutive forms of names, and a different person will call someone a different name within the same, context of a conversation, and it can be a little confusing. In this book, however, it was quite easy because the cast was small and a lot of the characters were not familiar enough with each other to use a diminutive form of dress, so it was very easy. There wasn't a single time where I had to backtrack and read things slower and figure out who was talking about whom or who was talking about whom, which is often the case when I read Dostoevsky, for an example. But I did enjoy this. The first 2/3 of this book was great. I did feel the ending was just so-so. It didn't really wrap things up satisfactorily for me, but in general, I'm very glad that I read Dead Souls, and I may read it again with my go-to translators in the future. All right, on to the fantasy portion of what I read in October, starting with some short fiction. So I talked about how I don't like short fiction, so I'm going to contradict myself. I bought this beautiful volume a couple months ago. If you saw my past TBR, I held this up. This is the Complete Chronicles of Conan the Barbarian by Robert E. Howard, all of the short stories that Howard wrote in his lifetime. I'm not reading this as one volume, however. I'm reading this based on the Gnome Press publications of the 1950s. All of these were published in 5 different installments where the editors put them in an order that adjusted the inner chronology, because the way that he wrote them kind of skip around Conan's life, early, and then he's a king, and then it's in the middle, and these stories kind of make it more consistent as far as where the chronology goes. So I'm enjoying that. I got to tell you though, this is probably my biggest surprise of the month, how much I'm loving these. Maybe I've seen just a couple lukewarm reviews of these Conan stories, but I'm really enjoying them. First of all, it's a nice change of pace from the normal epic fantasy, like the 2 books I'm about to talk about, which are each 900 pages. It's nice to be able to read a 30-page story that wraps up, in a bow, and you can, in one sitting, get a complete story. The other thing that I'm really enjoying, and I don't know why I'm surprised with this, but I really like Howard's writing style. I do feel that it might be a little antiquated to a modern reader, but as someone who enjoys works of the 19th century and early 20th century, I'm loving it. I'm really enjoying these tales. Of course, like any collection of short stories, some are better than others. I think the second collection that I read, Conan the Barbarian, was better than the first collection I read, The Coming of Conan. So I've read 2 of the 5 collections so far, and you can look for me to read more of those in the future. All right, and on to some epic fantasy. This was the big series that I tackled this month. I started Robin Hobb's Live Ship Traders trilogy. The first book is Ship of Magic. Second book is The Mad Ship. And I am absolutely blown away by Robin Hobb. I did a video when I first started this channel on my favorite authors, and I had a rule to put people on that list. I had to have read 5 of their books. Those books were 4 and 5 on my Robin Hobb journey, and I can unequivocally say that she's a top 3 author for me. I'm blown away by her characterization, her build of characters, her depth of characters, her pacing, her plotting. She turns a plot that is boring into the most compelling thing you could ever read. And I'm just loving this journey, and I have to say that her writing style, unequivocally for me, is the best this genre has ever seen. I haven't read Rothfuss yet, so I guess stay tuned on that. But as far as just sheer power of the pen, I don't think anybody touches Robin Hobb. I'm blown away by these first 2 books of this trilogy. When I finish the trilogy, I will do a full review on my channel. I'll talk about these. I made a previous video about the Farseer trilogy, and this one might be better, and I was so blown away by that one. But I'm really enjoying my journey with Robin Hobb, and that kind of closes out my month, the 8 books that I read this month. All right, on to the mini book haul. There's only 8 books here, and 7 are part of a series, so this won't be too long. So first of all, most of you probably saw this video of this beautiful Lord of the Rings illustrated deluxe edition. It was the highest video I've ever had on my YouTube channel, so you probably saw that video, but I did get this month, and I love this. I can't stop staring at it on the shelf. The other thing I bought was just a random eBay find. I had been reading Maurice Druillon's 7-book series, The Accursed Kings, from my Kindle, from my library, and I think I'd read the first 4 so far. And I really enjoyed them. I've been stretching them out over the last few years, and then I saw just a price I couldn't turn down for the entire series. So I bought the entire series of Maurice Druillon's The Accursed Kings. And this is historical fiction, 13th, 14th century in France. And George R.R. Martin, you see here, calls it the original Game of Thrones. So the first book was The Iron King, which I've read. The second one, The Strangled Queen. Third one is The Poisoned Crown. Fourth one, Royal Succession. Those are the 4 that I've read, and then the 3 that I have not. So I'm looking forward soon to starting The She-Wolf, and then The Lily and the Lion, and The King Without a Kingdom. And I really like the collection. It just looks, when I'm done with all 4, you know, they're going to look really nice on the shelf together. That is an important thing for those of us that are collectors of books, that it does look good on the shelf. But they're not on the shelf yet. I have a rule. I don't put a book on my bookshelf until I've read it. So that's my book haul. That's the 8 books I bought this month. So what can you look forward to me talking about next month? So first of all, obviously, there's no doubt I will be reading Ship of Destiny by Robin Hobb. I can't wait to finish the series. This one is currently on deck for me. Can't wait. Another thing I will do, I'll likely read at least 1 or 2 more installments of the Complete Chronicles of Conan. The next installment, I think, of those known press editions is called The Sword of Conan. So I'll be reading definitely that, probably 2, maybe even all 3, we'll see. And then I'm going to revisit a series from my youth. I enjoyed this. This was my 3rd favorite book series in high school. My favorite book series in high school were Lord of the Rings, The Belgariad, and the Dragonlance Legends. So I'm going to reread these. This is Time of the Twins, War of the Twins, and Test of the Twins by Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman. And I loved these in high school. We'll see how much I like them now. I reread the Chronicles by these same authors a couple years ago, and they were pretty good. I liked them, didn't love them, but I'll see, you know, how these stack up for a much older and more seasoned reader than I was in high school if I enjoy these. So that was my October. Books I read, books I bought, and books I'm hoping to read in November. Please let me know what you think about this format in the comments below. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. You can also follow me on Twitter for 1-sentence book reviews for everything that I read. I've read 89 books so far this year, so I'm probably going to hit 100 by the end of the year. Or you can follow me on Goodreads as well, where I give much more in-depth book reviews. And I also like Goodreads quite a bit because I get to see what you're reading, and that always gives me some good ideas. As always, thank you for watching. Until next time, goodbye.